watches to be given away as part of Wheel of Fortune. One spin is for everyone who registered, and second spin would be for people who support Elite CISOs on LinkedIn and like our post. Okay. And as you know, you have been attending Elite CISO session. The very next thing that comes is stand and attend. And I will not shy away from giving this challenge because this is something good, something related to health. And just as FYI, April 7th today is World Health Day as well. OK, now we all have to be fit and healthy. So that's why this challenge is there. So the challenge is while you are attending this session, why don't you guys stand? If you are going to sit for the entire day, or let's say even for 1 hour while you are attending this session, by sitting, you will have all these problems on the left hand side. You will have foggy brain, strained neck and whatnot. But we do not want any of that, right? What we want is we want to be healthy and fit. So take this challenge, stand for next 1 hour while Gurinder is going to talk about SSE. If you stand, you will have all these benefits on the right hand side. You will lose weight, your posture will be better, your brain will function better, and you will grasp better what we are going to talk in this session. So I give this challenge to everyone, including Gurinder. I'm not sure how Gurinder is set up in terms of presenting it. So if you accept this challenge, please go to the chat and say, yes, you are accepting this challenge, because that shows the energy, that shows the participation. That's what we can do in virtual events. Now, slightly, we are moving to the physical events as well. You will get to know that. So share your energy, guys. Please go to the chat and say yes. With this 11:04, and then I'm transferring it over to Gurinder for this session. Gurinder, over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and disable my camera, disable my mic, and over to you.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
So thank you so much, Vikas, for the introduction. Is my voice audible, guys?
Voice is audible, but what we see on the screen is the Teams interface. I think you have tabbed it.
Yeah,
so go back to your slides if possible. Yeah, and go to the slideshow mode, please.
Yeah, is it visible now?
Now it's visible and your voice is clear. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much, guys, for joining this session, and appreciate the gesture from Vikas. Like he's pushing everyone to stand up and join this session. Of course, for the attention and health, and as Vikas said, like it's basically a health day today. So I believe like it's pretty good gesture, like if we stand up and attend this session. So I think so I'm audible, and you can see my screen also. So is it visible? And
no, again you have changed. Earlier it was visible, and then go to slideshow. Now it's good. Don't touch it.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I will not touch it. So first of all, thanks for joining us today to discuss about this topic called Simplify and Consolidate with Security Service Edge. And in fact, it brings me the opportunity to introduce this new Gartner quadrant category also, which typically is quoted by Gartner as Security Service Edge. So in past, like in last 1 year, I think so you would have heard a lot about SASE Framework and SASification from multiple vendors, but this is something new, the Security Service Edge. It's a new quadrant which Gartner has brought in February this year. So my gist of the presentation is more about, I will cover about why organization need to adopt SSE or Security Service Edge. What are the benefits, underlying benefits of Security Service Edge, and how exactly we can simplify and consolidate our access. Typically, the secured access for a user, he can be from anywhere, and he is trying to access his resources. So how can we simplify and consolidate that with the help of this new SSE framework, which Gartner has brought in? So like I would say, like this is the new quadrant which Gartner came out in February. And typically, if you see, Netskope was named a leader in the Gartner quadrant. It was a proud moment for us because when we started our journey in 2012, like we had a vision like this, where we wanted to give a user-centric security to the organizations, and with best performance and with best data leakage controls and with best adaptive controls on security side. And if you read this report, the Gartner came out in February this year. So it talks about this adaptive security and user-centric security. And you can see, like, if you talk about the leaders, so there are three leaders in this quadrant: Zscaler, Netskope, and McAfee. So if I talk about majorly on the cloud native side, Zscaler and Netskope are the leaders in this space. McAfee, again, they were traditional vendors, more hardware specific, but again, they are still catching up typically on this side. But specifically, if I talk about on the leader side, these are the three leaders which typically are ruling this space, typically on the SSE side. So just to double click on SSE. So SSE is basically the security part of the SASE framework. So we talked about SASE a lot last year, and in fact, probably you would have gone through our presentation on SASE. We did that last year, and if not, we can share that insight with you. Plus, you would have also heard it from a lot of other vendors, wherein they would have postulated the SASE framework to you. Typically, SASE talks about the network and the security part. So network part is majorly the connectivity part of the solution, like for a user to connect to any network. So it will talk about the network part. And SD-WAN is a typical area on the network side wherein SASE is majorly focused on. On the security side, when you talk about the security side for this SASE framework, which Gartner came out, so there are multiple technologies which Gartner talk about, and that is wherein the Gartner has subset those technologies into security service edge solution. And if you see on a broad level, these are some of the modules which typically you can say consolidate the security service edge solution or platform, whether it is the secure web gateway solution, whether it is the CASB part of the solution, whether it is the zero trust part of the solution. So if I see in depth, these three solutions are ruling the SSE space. There are other technologies as well as underlying solutions as well as services also, which also forms part of the security service edge framework. But typically, if I talk about how the organization or the shift is happening for the organization, they're completely revamping their secure web gateway infra. They are moving towards the adaptation of SaaS application, which typically talks about the CASB part of the solution. And of course, the traditional VPN concentrators are getting choked, as well as there are scalability challenges which we observed in the traditional VPN concentrators during the COVID era. So they are again so CIOs, CEOs, as well as other high-level executives are thinking about revamping their traditional VPN infra also with the help of this journey. And they are moving towards zero trust architecture, and typically zero trust VPNs are becoming more popular in this space. So I will touch upon the other modules also, but typically, if I talk about SSE, it talks about all these modules in place. And it's if you talk about SASE was typically a framework, because we get asked about, like, what is the difference between SASE and SSE. SASE has been around a lot longer, and again, it was introduced by Gartner as a new framework for the edge security. And SASE, of course, basically has a subset called security service edge, which I talked about. Again, as I talked about the network and the security component, so SSE is more focused on the security side of the solution. So SASE was a framework. SSE is more about the implementation, use case, modules, services on the security side for the SASE framework. And so SSE, if you talk about, so this particular framework, it is a convergence of multiple security technologies, as we talked about earlier. So as I said, like, the primary technologies in this framework are secure web gateway, cloud access security broker or CASB, and zero trust network access, which again Gartner has heavily focused on. So you can see all these highlighted portions. So these are the key heart of the solution, typically talking about the SASE. Apart from that, there are a number of technologies that assist this framework. So whether it is the remote browser isolation solution, firewall as a service, or whether it is a CSPM and SSPM part, because they also form part of this framework now. So I would say, like, typically, if you talk about SSE framework, so it is a consolidation of all these technologies in place. So there are a number of technologies, as I said, which are assisting this SASE framework, SSE framework, and they go all in hand in hand. more on the platform specific approach, where typically, if you see, Gartner talks about a platform where all these technologies are getting consolidated. And again, there are performance gains and improvements, as well as user experience gains and improvement, when we consolidate all these technologies focused on user-centric security, rather than going for a piecemeal solution, which is an overhead typically on the performance side of the solution, as well as on the security side of the solution. So if we consolidate and move towards a platform, it becomes more, I would say, performance-oriented solution and more secured solution for a lot of organization which has taken this journey towards. So, SSE, I would say it is the biggest change to the cybersecurity in a decade. So if you look back at where the network security started, the first phase of protection was web, wherein we started using proxies. Like if I go back some years back, so proxies and URL filtering solutions were the heart of the solution for web security. And there was some adaptation of SaaS application, which also started happening some years back. And VPN was more limited towards road warriors, like only 5 to 10% of organizations, employees, they used to connect to a VPN solution in order to access the application, because most of the people were working from on-prem. And again, network DLP was, whether it was web DLP or SMTP DLP, so that was majorly focused as well as adopted by a lot of organizations if we go some years back. And so this was phase one, which I have witnessed with a lot of my customers. Phase two was when these security measures evolved and web security moved to a dedicated appliance-based solution called SWG, which was more secure, and it has a better performance as compared to the traditional URL filtering solution, more appliance specific. And again, organization also started asking for more visibility on the SaaS application, because their usage for SaaS applications started increasing in the second phase of the journey for a lot of organization. And they started asking for the shadow IT visibility also for the solution. And apart from that, endpoint and email DLP again became very prominent in this space. And there was more adaptation of a VPN solution, because a lot of private applications were getting accessed through, and organizations were opening the door for these private application access for most of the employees. In the phase three, I would say the last decade, where SWG architecture moved to a cloud-based SWG, and CASB evolved to there was evolution where I would say 60 to 70% of the web usage become SaaS application usage. And so CASB was a solution which typically became very popular in last couple of years, where the organization started having a need to identify what kind of applications my employees are accessing, whether they are sanctioned or unsanctioned. And since the traffic was more as compared to the web traffic, so the concern on the data leakage also became very prominent during the phase three. And therein, whether to adhere to the compliances or to do threat inspection on these applications, CASB became very important. And of course, like if you talk about the traditional VPN solutions moved to the zero trust VPN solution. Like if we talk about in last 2 years specifically, like during the COVID era, where people started working from home, the traditional VPN concentrators started choking, and there were a lot of pitfalls with respect to security, which CISOs or CIOs started seeing, and they started postulating the implementation of zero trust VPN solution, as well as adapting zero trust architecture in their total security overall architecture solution. And
hey, Gurinder, sorry to interrupt. There's a floating pane that is blocking the last row of your slide.
Okay.
That's
sorry.
Microsoft Teams. So say hide on that if possible.
Okay, sorry for that.
Yeah, just click on hide. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool.
Okay, sure. So like if we talk about, phase three is something which we I would say, which I as a consultant or a solution provider witnessed with a lot of my customers in last 3 or 4 years, and it is now moving towards phase four. Typically, phase three was more towards moving or journey of customers toward the cloud solution. They started adopting more cloud transformation. But phase four is something where I see there are some challenges, or there are some unsolved challenges with respect to user experience with respect to security gaps, with respect to, again, complexities, because they were still using a lot of piecemeal solution, whether it was 𝐒𝐿TE or whether it was CASB from a different vendor, or whether it was Zero Trust VPN from a third vendor, or whether it was a cloud DLP solution. So phase 3 is where I see the movement towards security service edge happening, where now customers are started thinking about consolidating all these 4 areas, whether it is the cloud technology on SWIC side or CASB side, and moving, giving access to the private application through Zero Trust VPN, and of course the cloud DLP, because now people are working from home and they are adapting a lot of cloud applications. So cloud DLP became more prominent as compared to the traditional DLP solutions. So security service edge evolved as a solution to those unsolved challenges by converging these technologies into a single platform, again offered by a single vendor organization. And this has improved the business agility, reduced their risk in both data and threats typically, and simplified the operation as well as decrease the cost. So that is something, the phase 4, where I see a lot of organizations today moving after going through all the 3 phases typically. And that is why I say that it is the biggest change which we are seeing or observing in this space, in the cybersecurity space today, as per our experience for different customers going through cloud transformation. And so, like, typically, if I can summarize what were the key drivers for SSE and SASE adaptation by a lot of the customers, typically on the framework side, like I would say the increase in adaptation of cloud application. Like, say, if I talk about a normal enterprise, so they are using today 800 plus SaaS applications which their employees are accessing, and a lot of these applications are unsanctioned applications. So when there was a shift for web traffic over adoption of more SaaS application, again the concern was more on the data leakage side, compliance side, as well as threat side on those applications, which again helped to bring SSE focus for Gartner as well as the organizations. Similarly, like when you talk about these cloud applications, since they can be accessed from anywhere, and you can have multiple instances inside these cloud application, like say if I am a 𝐂365 user, like if I'm using Teams, so I can easily have multiple instances of Teams or 𝐂365 inside my premises by a user, by employee, by basically having a personal instance of 𝐂365 or Teams, again subscribed by a personal user. So in that case, identifying these multiple instances of a same application and probating data leakage inside these applications was again one of the prominent use case which I observed by a lot of organizations, because that is a big concern. And like we have observed the scenarios where a lot of people who are leaving the organization, they have started uploading confidential data on their personal instances of G Suite, or it can be any sanction application which the employer has given to the employee. So because this particular visibility was not there in the traditional security solution, so to mitigate the challenge with respect to this became very prominent, and again it was one of the key driver for SSE space. Of course, like we also witnessed a lot of cloud threats because hackers started using S3 storage space, IaaS platforms, 𝐂365 OneDrive and G Drive in order to basically basically upload their exploits. And since these were all the whitelisted and trusted domains by the employer, so it became very easy for the hackers also to infiltrate the network. So identifying these cloud storage instances as well as probating any kind of malware downloads from those instances also was seen during last couple of years. We also witnessed a lot of malware downloads by the employees, which unknowingly they did by using their personal instances of G Drive or 𝐂365. And of course, there were a lot of collaboration application which penetrated during this COVID era. So Teams became a very popular usage, Zoom became a very popular usage, and a lot of information sharing could happen through these collaboration tools. And again, the challenge was majorly on the data leakage side, how exactly we can mitigate the concerns of data leakage, like if my employees are adapting multiple collaboration applications. So typically, again, like this economic uncertainty which we saw in last couple of years, as well as multiple zero-day threat attacks which we observed typically from the cloud side as well as the application side, they really brought the focus towards this space, which typically I'm talking about today, the secure service edge, and where organizations have started consolidating these multiple piecemeal solution into a platform specific solution, where all the key technologies, whether it is the next generation secure web gateway solution, or it is the zero trust VPN part of the solution. So that is consolidating into a single platform, into a single pass architecture, where the policies can be configured for all these different use cases in the single console, and you also get a forensics for all these different technologies in a single console. So the move towards platform specific approach is something which again has been patronized by Gartner in this SSE report, if you go through it. And these were some of the key drivers which typically we observed by like when we saw the journey for multiple organizations in this space. So in addition to this, when you talk about this SSE report postulated by Gartner, they also have came out with one more report which talk about the critical capabilities. So I showed you that we are in the leaders quadrant, Netskope, Zscaler, and McAfee. They were in the leaders quadrant, as well as there are other vendors who are in challenger space and other spaces in this SSE space quadrant. So typically they have came out with a report called Critical Capabilities Report, where they have evaluated all these vendors on different parameters, which I will talk about, majorly focus on the use case as well as 8 to 10 parameters which Gartner has seen typically to rate our like Netskope or Zscaler as a leader or McAfee as a leader and other vendors in different other spaces. So I will talk about the key 4 use cases which Gartner typically patronize on this report, as well as why they have rated us as a leader or Zscaler as a leader or probably McAfee as a leader in this particular space. So if you talk about the 4 use cases, the 4 key use cases or the outcomes which the Gartner has covered in this report, it's typically secure web and cloud usage. So that is something which is the most prominent one. So it's the simplest and most obvious goal for SSE to provide secure web and cloud usage. And the primary function, if you go in depth into the core technologies, will be 𝐂𝐐I𝐿 and 𝐂𝐝𝐿 in this space. So securing access to web and cloud usage, management of cloud service tenancy, compliances. Again, it covers the part of this space itself. And also there is some element of CSPM which also comes into this space, because there has been a lot of adaptation of IaaS services by a lot of our customers, and checking the posture for the IaaS platforms they have adapted, or checking the posture of the application, which typically is covered in SSPM and CSPM space, again becomes very important for the organizations today. So Gartner talks about these key things when they cover this particular use case called secure web and cloud usage. The second one is detect and mitigate threats. So again, SSE provides a central service to detect and prevent threats. Again, it can be from an application, it can be from a web traffic, it can be from an IaaS access. So again, this particular use case talk about the complete static and dynamic code analysis of anything which is getting downloaded from cloud or web or applications, and it can be a SaaS application or even the private application. So mitigate these threats. It can be a zero-day threat or a malware threat or a normal virus threat. So again, that is very important use case typically on the SSE side, covered by all these modules which I talked about in my previous slide. Third use case, like as we already know, connect and secure the remote workers. So SSE connect users like to the security, you can say services, as well as private application, which may be hosted in the data center of a customer with all the zero trust principles in place. So strong SSE vendors allow most flexibility in how users connect to the service and access the application, whether it is a SaaS application or a private application. Again, enterprise application and service integration play a key role as well. Again, when you talk about telemetry as well as providing access, secured access to SaaS as well as their private application, again, it forms an important element of the SSE architecture, which again is covered in this report postulated by Gartner. And last and not the least, identity and sensitive information protection. So DLP again forms the core of core focus as well as key discussion point for SSE space, because in the end we are basically trying to safeguard the data, we are trying to protect the data. So in that case, the SSE solution provided by a good vendor should have a very strong DLP in place, because people are accessing as well as collaborating data from home, from their personal devices, and they are on the go. So right now, a user-centric DLP solution, and which has a capability to basically do a posture check and give access to different application, as well as it has adaptive capability based on the user posture. You can give a restricted access, or you can have a policy where a sensitive information will not be available for upload if a user AV service is not running. So those kind of use case also become a talk or key element for Gartner in this particular critical report. So I talked about the 4 use cases, and these 4 use cases are typically covered in these 10 parameters. So these are the key parameters which Gartner has typically checked for different vendors in the SSE space, which they came out in February. So if you talk about, like I talked about, the secure web and cloud usage and management. So Gartner regularly sees organization consumes hundreds of applications, and to give access to these applications in a secured manner, where we can basically have a risk score for different application, and on the basis of the risk scoring for different application, we can provision access to employees on those application, is one of the parameter. Advanced threat detection, again I talked about, like we are seeing a lot of threats hosted by hackers in cloud. So any kind of data upload or download which is happening on the cloud or on the web or on the private application should be scanned by a SSE solution. So this is again one parameter. Enabling remote working, I talked about, like again giving a secured access for remote users or users working from home or users working from anywhere, again forms a very core element typically on the SSE space side, where Gartner has rated different vendors based on the platform specific as well as the cloud native solution which is available by different vendors in this space. Cloud application discovery, again visibility becomes very important today for cloud application, because there is usage of a lot of unsanctioned applications inside the organization. In fact, more on the unsanctioned applications, and there are a lot of risk attached to these unsanctioned application usage, identifying multiple instances inside these applications. So Gartner is again talking about these capabilities which should be there in the SSE solution when you are evaluating different parameters. So again, activity-based controls also become an important parameter, where instead of blocking or allowing a specific application or URL, Gartner is talking about giving controlled access on web as well as on the application space, typically which we typically called activity controls. Like say, a user should be allowed to upload some information on his personal instance of G Drive or OneDrive, but he should not be allowed to upload financial information on his G Drive or OneDrive. So those kind of use cases where I can also observe different activities inside a website or an application also is something which Gartner talks about as one of the key parameter as well as the feature required in this space, where you can give access to different application. You can curb 8 to 10 different controls inside activity-based console inside a specific website or application, like user login, upload, download, sharing. So those kind of activity controls are also very important, because a lot of websites and applications today are giving these controls to the user, which can be misused, or it can be one of the reason for a zero-day threat or probably data leakage inside the solution. So data security, as I talked about, it's a core of the solution. So we are talking about, or Gartner is again talking about, a holistic data security, wherein a user can be anywhere, but the same or stringent DLP control should be possible to allot for a specific user based on his different, like say he's working from office, he's working from home. So DLP has to be adaptive. So there has to be some MLAI scanning also, or capabilities which should also go into a DLP solution, apart from identifying confidential information inside images like OCR inspection. So Gartner talks about these capabilities typically on the DLP side, and it should be holistic, wherein the solution should be able to identify data leakage inside an application, inside website, inside private application, or something shared from a sanction application like OneDrive, SharePoint. So those kind of controls also is something which becomes very prominent in this architecture. Apart from that, UBA again is something which has become very important today, wherein a lot of insider threats are being seen inside the organization. And how exactly we can mitigate those insider threats is basically by having a granular user behavior analytic engine, which again is something which Gartner confirms that it should be there in the SSE space by a solution vendor, which is giving these capabilities on the platform side. CSPM and SSPM again are important, as we talked about, like typically to give secured access on the cloud as well as web. CSPM and SSPM becomes very important to do a posture check, because there are organizations which are adapting IS, and it becomes very important to do a posture check on the IaaS platforms like AWS, Azure, GCP, and to keep on checking the compliance status as well as misconfiguration inside these platforms when you try to access these public platforms which are hosted at third-party cloud. So these are, and again, integration becomes very important part of the SSP space, where integration with the SSO solution, plugin, as well as open architecture in this space when you talk about typically the SSE features. So these are some of the 10 features or 10 parameters on which Gartner has rated multiple vendors in this space. And these all are covered by the leaders. Typically, when you talk about the 3 leaders which you talk about at a different level, there are different ratings which I will show where different vendors have been provisioned by Gartner in these parameters also. So Vikas, should I stop for questions, or like can I move ahead, or should we cover the questions?
Questions we'll take at the end. Right,
Okay,
so you can continue. I see one Sarvana has raised hand. So Sarvana will come back to you towards the end when we start the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. So so based on the discussion we had, so some of these are obvious like discussions which the organizations typically are having like when they are talking about this space, whether it is the replacement of their legacy on-prem solution. So these are, you can say, indications or directions where the organization knowingly or unknowingly is moving towards the SSE space, whether it is a holistic data protection solution, whether it is protection from ransomwares, which we saw lately in last 1 or 2 years infiltrating through cloud, whether it is a zero trust project where they are postulating the principles of zero trust, and typically the movement we are seeing from traditional VPN solution to platform specific zero trust VPN solution, securing the remote workforce where they can be inside the office premises or outside, because a lot of organizations today also are working from home. And I've based on what I see, like there will be a hybrid culture which will probably go hand in hand, like even after some years now, because there has been changes in modus operandi by a lot of organizations, and they are allowing people to work from home. And again, moving from hairpinning architecture to direct to net architecture, which again is the core of SSE solution. So these are some of the, I would say, indications which typically are wherein a customer is moving toward this space. And so if you talk about like what are the challenges addressed, like to understand why these critical capabilities and use cases are so important, let's take a step back and look at where some of the customers are or adapting SSE technologies, or they are in the in the direction of adapting the SSE technologies. Like for organization, they haven't started the SSE solution. They may have still disjointed solution, or they may have many vendors on web application or SaaS or CASB or public cloud space, or even they may have multiple VPN solution in a single organization. If the organization is large, they may still be using on-prem appliances. They may be still backhauling the traffic to their data centers for inspection. Many organizations, they may be lacking in their data protection, because the solutions have not evolved moving towards the cloud DLP scanning also. And again, they may still be on the legacy threat protection, wherein like new threats like ransomware typically originating from the cloud are not getting scanned by the traditional solution. Another sign that SSE may be needed in your organization is using multiple agents to achieve the security, typically on these piecemeal solutions. So like this is what I would say, like typically SSE solution will be able to help the customers, whether it is moving, consolidating different technologies, whether it is moving toward a cloud native architecture, whether it is basically protecting the backhaul and going direct to net for access to like critical services or application like O365 Teams, or even all the SaaS applications, or again moving towards more advanced cloud DLP, which is more granular in nature with a lot of additional features with the MLA inspection, protecting the insider threats to UBA, and again consolidating all this into a single architecture, single platform specific architecture with a single agent. So how exactly organizations are adapting this journey? So typically, like on the SSE side, many business today are starting by converging the controls for web and SaaS. So like SWG and CASB, so inline scanning for SWG and CASB is getting consolidated. And this naturally brings in the cloud firewall piece of the solution, because people are working from home, and they are organizations are typically asking that apart from HTTP, HTTPS protocol, they also need scanning for other ports and protocols when a user is working typically from home. So in that case, again, this is a direction which I'm typically trying to say. And as SSE defines like ZTNA as a key pillar, so this will quickly become, like I would say, de facto for a lot of organizations, where a lot of large enterprises I have seen, they've already started moving from their traditional VPN solution, or they are taking a staggered approach where they are moving some of the application from traditional VPN to the zero trust VPN solution, which is more secure. And since it's cloud native, so in that case, there are no concerns for scalability, or there is no concern for hairpinning the complete traffic to their central gateways. So again, starting inline and establishing the value of visibility and context, whether it is app instance awareness or user and threat, and of course the data. So that again is something which like organization have started thinking on those advanced use cases, and therein they have started adapting the journey towards the SSE. So by adding again out of band options like CASB API, SSPM and CSPM for SaaS and public cloud posture management is again something which is important for a lot of organizations which are taking the step toward this direction. UBA is again something which they are trying to adapt now. Again, in the single consolidated platform solution, where we can get visibility on all these different access for a user and different piecemeal solution into a consolidated UBA score for a particular user, which can be utilized in the policies or advanced policies for SSE space. So, and again, there can be some analytics platforms which can mine and shine all the data which we are getting from different solutions into a consolidated SSE data analytic platform. So this is something, a journey which I see on a very broad level, where you can see the indication how exactly different organizations are moving in this direction. So if I talk about the core pillars of SSE, so cloud native, secure web gateway solution, CASB inline, and zero trust VPN solution is the key. Converge security technologies, which include DLP, advanced threat protection, firewall as a service, RBI, which is the browser isolation part of the solution, or UEBA part of the solution, with the single pass architecture is again a key feature of a SSE. Threat and data protection with sensitive data awareness again is required for inline traffic analysis, and API inspection on data at rest is again very important part, which again Gartner talk about in the SSE pillar. Adaptive policy control is a key, which I see like again based on zero trust principles, having awareness of a user, device, application, and data. how exactly these 4 different elements are getting used by a user, and based on the different posture of a user on access of these services or application, adapting to the policy controls again is a very important feature, which highlight the core of SSE solution. And again, strong actionable SLAs, because like since you are consolidating all these security technologies, the SLA becomes very important with better performance, which again is talked about in the SSE space in this solution. So if I talk about the key advantages, I would say simplicity is one big advantage, sophistication on the security side. Again, adaptation of zero trust principles, data protection as a gold standard. So these are some of the key, I would say, advantages which go hand in hand when you talk about, again, these are core of our solution. So if I talk about Netskope, we have a simplified SSE capabilities across all the advantages which we are offering, whether it is a sophistication on the cloud security side or zero trust or data protection, which again is the core of the solution. And with better performance, which you will get in a single pass architecture solution. So if I talk about the key business value and outcomes, simplicity and the faster user experience. Again, like when you talk about like the benefits typically will be in decreasing the security risk, improving the user experience with respect to performance and access with the single pass architecture. And again, lowering the cost also typically becomes a big business as you have a single vendor, single agent, single platform to deal with. So you don't have to have multiple appliances or solution management, and you will get a complete forensic of the solution also in a consolidated platform. So like just summarizing, because I'm just like above my time, but just to summarize, so security service edge is a convergence of security capabilities in the cloud. And again, it talks about typically, if I talk about, it talks about 4 specific bullet points, which typically are support for any worker working from anywhere, anytime, and giving him secured access to all the applications and web, reducing the complexity and improving his experience typically for any kind of access which happens on the cloud side. So Netskope does this all. Typically, if I talk about all these 4 bullet points, so they are covered in our solution. And these are some critical capabilities where we were rated against the competition by Gartner in this space. So I think so. I'm up for the Q&As. So.
Hey, great session, Gurinder. Overall, only 2 minutes talking about Netskope, and overall very good gyan, very good knowledge on SASE. So really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So guys, go ahead. I'll start to unmute. So if you want to ask question, please raise your hand. I see about 4 people have raised hand. I'm gonna unmute them one by one. So Sarvana ji, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. So, like, I hope
you're able to hear me. Yeah, because thanks for the thing. So it is a good session where from Netskope side they are able to explain the overall the solution offering on there in the cloud security. So I just want to know about the Netskope. That I'd like to put the question in the chat, but it's not able to do. So you guys are able to cover up all the SaaS part and everything. So what is your solution? What is your roadmap on the cloud workloads protection platform CWP and the native workloads in the cloud, so that when we talk about all the Kubernetes and so those kind of a security, what is your viewpoint on that? And the second thing is, as you're referring most of the Gartner as your one of the recommender, yeah, Gartner, you guys are a leader in that along with others, Zscaler, everyone. So
yes,
many of the scenarios Gartner takes on the go-ahead scenarios, use cases, which is pretty much globally everyone able to adapt it. But if you take up an Indian market where we need we cannot directly replicate the Gartner's report use cases. So
Exactly.
many of the time the Gartner reports have turned on in a different way. So are you still believing the reports and the recommendations only with the Gartner, or you have in-depth use cases where you can able to address the enterprise, medium, and all kind of business models?
Okay, so like appreciate a very good question. In fact, like specifically on the Gartner side, as you rightly said. So what I have observed is like I don't.
What we will take is this. There is a word is there. Gartner's reports take a pinch of the salt,
Yes,
but
sir.
even the pinch of the salt will make the difference of the menu at the
Yeah,
end of the day.
sir,
But how it is going to change the menu, it's on your end.
agreed. So, nahi, I'm totally with you on that. So I also don't patronize Gartner very much, but typically, like what Gartner is postulating on the SSE side or the journey which organization are taking. So typically, what they have quoted as security service edge. So that is something which we are really seeing organization adapting. But I would say, like in the end, it boils down to the use cases. So it's not that don't go by any buzzword, whether it is SASE or whether you talk about SSE, go by the use cases which are important for the organization. And again, it's a journey. It's not a that you have to adapt all the modules to be SASE compliant or SSE compliant. So it's a journey. So for some organization, moving to the cloud makes sense from an on-prem solution, or adapting a zero trust VPN solution makes sense because it's an important use case, and we are seeing a lot of threats on the traditional VPN solution. So what they have talked holistically, and they have given a very general view on the movement where the organizations are taking. But every industry as well as every organization is different, and it depends on the what kind of use cases typically which may complement your organization. Whether like when you talk about Netskope, we are very strong on the DLP side of the solution, or we are very strong on the UB and the platform piece of the solution, which is cloud native. So if those kind of use cases make sense for you, and it is a need of the hour for your organization, then you can go ahead with those use cases, and you can adapt the vendor which makes sense for those use cases. So I won't say like you go blindly by these reports, but check the features and functionalities, because a lot of the features or a lot of the 10 parameters which I talked about, I'm seeing a lot of organization adapting these 10 parameters, whether it is the data protection or adaptation of more SaaS application, or identifying multiple instances inside these sanction application, which again is a big pain area for a lot of organization, and again increase in threats on the cloud side. So when you talk about all the parameters which Gartner is basically evaluating the vendors, so it started making sense. But as I said, like maybe you are just starting your journey on the cloud. So right now the movement from your on-prem SWIG solution to cloud native solution for SWIG part becomes very important for you with some application awareness. So it may not be that all the use case makes sense for you today, but that is a general direction which Gartner has postulated, where a lot of organizations which are going through this cloud journey, as well as in this work from home scenario, where people have started working from home, and user-centric security has become very important. That is why they are also talking about cloud firewall as a service or remote browser isolation, which becomes part of the SSE space. But again, like just to reiterate, SSE, so the three technologies are something which prominently Gartner is also talking about. And in fact, we are also seeing in a lot of our interaction with the customer, that is movement to the cloud SWIG solution, adaptation of zero trust VPN solution, and again, consolidation of CASB and web space into a single. In fact, with the SSE space, the Gartner has decided that there will be no SWIG quadrant going forward and CASB quadrant going forward, because these two technologies are getting merged into this space. So whatever Gartner has chosen as leaders, they have evaluated all the features and parameters. And as I said, like for different organization, different use case make more sense. I go by use cases. If it makes sense for your organization, and what are the important things or the important direction which your organization want to take, go by that. And coming back to the question on the workload protection side, so today, like we don't have, so CSPM and SSPM are the two solutions which typically we provide on the IaaS platform side or on the application side, which are more application driven. Right now, we don't have typically solutions for workload protection. we have data security protection for storage spaces inside these platform, but today we integrate with third-party vendors in order to provide the solution, typically on the workload protection side of the solution. So that is something which we are thinking about in our roadmap, but right now it's not available in the solution. So so that's why, like, when you talk about SSE, it also talk about the integration with the other solution, and we are open for integration. We have multiple technologies on the threat intel side also, where we can integrate with other threat intel vendors and can provision better security. We can absorb the IOC information from your existing security vendors, and that can be utilized in our policies as well as for provisioning a better cloud security for your employees. So does it answer your query, sir?
I'm sure it does. Yeah. You took a lot of time to explain that. So next question, I think the explanation has to be a little short so that we can take more questions, and kind of we are running out of time. So Gunjan, go ahead, ask your question, please.
Hey, thanks, Virendra, for a detailed session. Quick question, does it work on a private cloud as well, these controls that you mentioned?
Private cloud, yes. So today, like when you talk about Gartner has talked about...
I'll keep it short. Sorry, I have just need more clarification. So when you say that SSE platform, you talk about the various features.
Yes.
So does it replace my existing VPN, DLP, UBA, which I have, let's say, implemented as part of my SIM solution? Does it replace all of that and really, work as a one solution?
It depends on what implementation you have done on these spaces. But as you coming to the first question, Gartner talks about both SaaS and private application typically for these features, whether it is threat inspection or data leakage side. So yes, these features have to be considered. The cloud native solution is something which a lot of organizations are taking a step. But yeah, it depends on what you have deployed, whether, like, say, if I talk about a matured UBA space, again, this solution is also maturing on the UBA side. So I won't say, like, say, if I talk about only my solution, so we have a very good UBA solution typically wherein we use it on the DLP side as well as to provide a risk score to an employee, and that can be utilized in the policy, but that may not be as great as what UBA you have implemented. So it depends on what kind of implementation you have on the UBA side. But yeah, for a lot of organization, it can be easily displaced. Yeah.
And what about on the IDAM side? Does it replace my existing IDAM as well?
No, right now we are not we are not on the IDAM side right now.
Sure.
Yeah, we are not on that. We again integrate with third parties. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Great. Yes. Great. Yeah. Let's move forward. Next question, Mohanji, please unmute yourself. Ask your question.
Hi, Kurinder.
Hi, sir.
Kurinder, my question is good. Thanks. So Kurinder, my question is about the repository part. Whether the example like a browser user can upload any data, whether file transfer part, whether we transfer anything, whether our solution can prevent on the cloud repository front. Example, someone is uploading the file.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So it will hold good for like starting from HTTP, TPS is something which typically it starts with, because a lot of exchange of this information happen on these protocol. But yeah, it also will cover the other ports and protocols with cloud firewall as a service. So that is something which, again, as I said, it's one of the element of SSE space. I didn't focus a lot on the features and functionalities, but yeah, it talks about again doing everything on other ports and protocol also, which is something where these cloud native solution provider are evolving. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes.
Great. So we have been trying from past many sessions to get a question from Vijay Devnath ji. He always has a problem with the mic. So Vijay ji, I again unmuted you. Let's see if you can ask question now or not. Going once, going twice. I think you got to get rid of your x86 computer. Get into something newer one, Vijay ji. Thank you. Okay, so that's about it. I don't think he can unmute himself, and we'll chat on WhatsApp about it in the Delhi group. Okay, so that's about it. I think, guys, we have 3 minutes left. So thanks, Gurinder. Amazing session. Guys, if you want to download the participation certificate that you see on the screen right now, the password to download the certificate is passwordless. Okay, I'll show you how to download this certificate. So go to 𝐒𝐈𝐿TECISOs website, click on events, click on upcoming events. You will come to this page. Click on CP certificate. Put your email address over here wherever you want your certificate. Put your full name, and the secret to download the certificate is PASSWORDLESS passwordless, one word. Right now, why passwordless? Because password is one of the biggest problem that security industry has not been able to solve. And to share some insights around this, next week on Thursday we have a session with IDEMIUM, and they will talk about passwordless authentication for modern workforce, right? So we will see how without password we can enable employees and workforce. So that's why the password is passwordless. This session is next week, 11 o'clock India time, as we do every week our sessions, the elite knowledge session. So registrations are open. You can go ahead and register for it. And then last thing that everybody is kind of waiting for, you see how cluttered this wheel of fortune looks like, because there are 346 participants or registrations we received. I think we have about 230 attendees today. So what I'm going to do is there are 5 giveaways for this session. The 5 giveaways are smart watches. We will run the first round. This would be for the people who supported on LinkedIn, right? Who liked our post on LinkedIn. So I'm going to spin it. If your name comes, go to the chat and say yes that you are there in the session. Okay, I'm spinning it now. I'm keeping a check on the chat as well on the side. Mr. Kali Rajan from Shriram Value Survey. So the first one is gone. Mr. Kali, if you are there in the session, go to the chat and say yes, you are in the session. Spinning for the second one now. And the winner for the second watch is Piyush Mistry, my very good friend from Mumbai. I'm sure Piyush, you are there in the session. So go to the chat and say yes, you are there in the session, and we will have the smart watch delivered. I don't see any yes as of now. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I will delete all these entries from here. And next I'm going to post all the people who liked the post on LinkedIn, and you will see how clear the wheel looks like now, right? Much better as compared to the previous one. Now we have 3 giveaways, 3 smartwatches for people who support 𝐒𝐿ITE_CISOs. So I'm going to spin it now for the third one. And for the third one, we have Mr. Kamal Gupta. Kamalji, I'm sure you are there. I saw your name. So go to the chat and say yes, you are there in the session. Spinning for the fourth one now. For the fourth one, Vivek Daharia ji from Mumbai. Vivek ji, if you are there, go to the chat and say yes. We just missed Gunjan by 1 point. Gunjan always asks very great questions, very smart questions in all the sessions. So really appreciate that, Gunjan. Going for the last one now. This is the fifth one. And the fifth one goes to Nilesh Roy, again from Mumbai chapter. So Nilesh bhai, if you are there in session, go to the chat and say yes. Let me see what's going on in the chat. So I see Kamal bhai have said yes, Vivek ji have said yes. Louis is saying yes, but I don't know who Louis is. So great. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for joining 𝐒𝐿ITE_CISO session 12:01. Perfect timing. The recording will go on 𝐒𝐿ITE_CISO's website and YouTube channel. See you guys next week on Thursday, 11 o'clock. Bye for now. Thanks, Gurinder and Netskope team.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vikas. Thanks all for joining the session. Yeah, thanks for the time.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you.